Hey everybody, college football is fast approaching, and some of you might have been wondering when the next coordinator project video is coming out. This summer, I've been working on a massive project on the early history of the air raid, like from the 80s and the 90s, with a couple of different projects coming off of that, so that is all coming down the road. In the meantime, I've also done some guest spots on a couple of podcasts. So I talked about Kendall Briles with Locked On Horned Frogs, and most recently I joined the guys at the Buck Around podcast to talk Luke Fickell and his dollar package. And I'll put links to both of those discussions in the description if you want to check them out. While I was talking with the Buck Around, it seemed like there was a lot of stuff that'd be easier to understand with some film in front of us. So this video is kind of a film study supplement to that discussion. So just to recap the basic formations and alignments that you're going to see in the dollar package, when Fickell was at Cincinnati, this was called a 3-3-5. So here we've got your three defensive linemen, and then these were the three guys that were listed as linebackers on the depth chart. Now, something that you might see when you look at this is that it almost looks like the linebackers aren't all created equal. Like they're not all doing the same thing. And that is a major feature of the dollar package, and it's part of what makes it so good at what it's trying to do. So first we see that there are two linebackers that are lined up closer to the line of scrimmage. Here, this guy's only 2 yards off the ball. This guy's 3. And those are your kind of classic big inside linebacker guys. They can be 240, 250 pounds. Their goal is to be able to take on these offensive guards. We'll talk more about why they need to do that as we look at some run plays in a minute. This third linebacker, in contrast, isn't necessarily in that same mold. This is the guy that they call the dollar backer. And here, he's almost playing more like this safety that we have over here. And in fact, I'm going to call both of those guys overhang players. All I mean by that is we look down here, we've got a defensive end on the edge. He's playing outside of this tackle. And so an overhang player is going to be anyone who's lined up outside of the edge defender, usually off the ball. So defensive ends on the edge, overhang players outside of him. Defensive ends on the edge, overhang players outside of him. So that's the basic personnel and alignment that you're going to see from this dollar, at least in the front. Now, earlier when I talked about these overhang players, I said that those are the guys that are kind of unique in this defensive structure, and that they're really the reason that this defense exists. So what do I mean by that? Well, the reason that these overhang players are doing what they're doing and are lined up where they are is because they want to take away the space between the offensive line and the next receiver outside the offensive line. So this kind of lane right here, the point of these overhang players is to take that space away. And we can see why that's going to be important if we switch over and look at a play from Wisconsin's defense last season. So we just saw that the point of those overhang players is to take away the space in between the offensive tackle or the end man on the line of scrimmage and kind of the next receiver outside. So it's this lane that those overhang players are really looking to take away. In this game from last year, we see that they don't have that overhang player. So here's the edge guy, right? There's nobody outside and off the ball who's kind of filling this space on the G right here. And so here Illinois is going to be able to take advantage of that by going after this linebacker who's lined up more inside than an overhang player would be. They're going to go after him with a run pass option. So the idea here is that the running back is going to execute a run play to the right, and the quarterback can hand it off to him. Or he can pull the ball and throw it to this wide receiver on a slant. So let's see how that attacks this guy. So after the snap, we're going to see the offensive line and the running back all executing this run play to the right. And what we're going to see from this linebacker is that he chases that action. So before the snap, he's lined up outside of this hash. As the play develops, we're going to see him get pulled down toward the middle of the formation as he reacts to the offensive line and the running back's path. Now, the reason that this is so effective is because on this run pass option play, the quarterback also has the ability to throw if that linebacker chases the run. So when this guy jumps down toward the middle of the field, they're going to have an answer for that. And that answer is going to be a slant by this receiver right here. He's going to be the guy that ends up getting the ball. So again, the ball is snapped. The quarterback and the running back mesh, and that quarterback is looking straight up at that linebacker. And so right now he knows that guy is moving down toward the middle of the field. That tells the quarterback to pull the ball and throw a slant to this guy right here, where he's going to hit him right on that G, right in that open space that I highlighted earlier. That guy's able to get downfield. That linebacker's not really anywhere close to him, and Illinois picks up a nice gain. So as a contrast to that, here we've got Cincinnati playing the dollar package against Alabama. So they've got 3 defensive linemen, 2 big inside linebackers, the dollar backer playing one overhang, and then a safety playing the other overhang. And the key to taking away the RPO is that the dollar package is going to do things that we're going to talk about to try and make it so that this overhang player can be patient. So here, Alabama is running an RPO. So if we run this forward, we see the snap, we see the offensive line and the running back all executing a run to the right. And we see the quarterback up again with his eyes on that overhang player. But now if we go back and look at the pre-snap look, we see that before the ball snapped, that safety is about 6 yards off the ball and just outside of the hash. And then at the point where the quarterback's reading him, he's come up just a little bit, but he's still outside the hash. So he's not jumping down inside to chase the run. That's a feature of how the dollar defends the run in the first place. So now we imagine if we were to get a slant from one of these wide receivers, the quarterbacks here are trying to read, is that slant going to be open? Well, no. There's this guy sitting right here ready to break on that and make a play on that ball. Okay, so now that we understand how the dollar is really well set up to take away the pass part of these run pass options, some of you might be wondering, what about the run itself? And specifically, you might be wondering, can you run the dollar package against a physical run game? Can you use it to win a Big Ten championship at Wisconsin? Can you use it to be competitive in the playoffs? Some people might be thinking of this Cincinnati-Alabama game and going, is this something that you can actually do? We might remember that Alabama rushed for 300 yards in this game. Now, the key here, the key to the dollar package is being able to take away a physical run game while still allowing these overhang players to be patient and sit in those RPO windows. And the key to doing that, the way that that all works, comes down to these kind of 5 core run players, the non-overhang part of the front. So we'll remember that here we've got 3 defensive linemen, and then I've said that we've got 2 linebackers who are your big classic inside linebacker types, 240, 250-pound guys. And I also mentioned that they line up a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage than you might typically see from a linebacker. Here they've got their toes at about 3 yards off the ball. It wouldn't be uncommon to see one of them at 2 yards at least, or even closer. And the reason that those guys are lining up so tight like this, and the reason that they're kind of big guys who can mix it up a little bit, is because in this system, these linebackers want to control or command the blocks of the offensive guards right here. They want to force those guards to block them. Why do they want to do that? Well, if these guards are out of the picture on any run play, if they're occupied by these linebackers, what does that do? It creates a bunch of one-on-ones for the defensive line right here, right? If the guards are out of the picture, then the end is one-on-one on the tackle, the nose is one-on-one on the center, and then this end ideally is one-on-one on the tackle as well. Once we understand that the point of these linebackers playing tight to the line of scrimmage is to occupy the offensive guards, then we can understand another major point of emphasis for Fickell, which is that he wants defensive linemen who can win those one-on-ones and create havoc. The idea is if they can win their one-on-ones and get away from their blockers, they can force the running back to redirect or change his path. If the running back's changing his path, he's not coming straight downhill, and that allows our overhang players to stay patient and to sit in those RPO windows. Okay, so we can watch this. If we just kind of go down the line, we can see how this is all supposed to look. The first thing that we want to focus on is our right guard right here, and we just want to see and confirm that he is not involved on a double team, either on the nose tackle or on the defensive end. He's just releasing straight up to this linebacker. So we'll scrub this forward, keep an eye on this right guard, and just make sure that he's doing that. Okay, so sure enough, there he is. He's up to block that linebacker. He doesn't work any kind of combo block on either of these defensive linemen. So let's just start at the defensive line and work our way across and see the impact of this dollar package strategy. So when this guard is out of the picture, we know that this defensive end will be one-on-one with the right tackle. You might be wondering, well, what about that tight end? Couldn't he be in a double team? Well, Cincinnati is going to use their overhang player to attack that tight end. So the overhang is going to take care of the tight end, and the defensive end will, in fact, be one-on-one with this right tackle. So let's see how he does. Keep an eye on this guy, okay? The ball's snapped. He engages the right tackle, and right here, he's won the rep, right? He's got his shoulders kind of clear of that guy. His man's lunging a little bit. If we run this forward even a little bit more, boom, that is havoc. That's chaos, right? He's gotten the one-on-one. He's won it. He's gotten into the backfield. And now what does this running back have to do? He has to stop his feet and change directions. That's exactly what the dollar package is trying to create when it brings these linebackers up tight to the line of scrimmage, forces the guards to block them. Now that we know that this right guard's out of the picture, we can watch this nose tackle against the center. Okay, so after the snap, the nose tackle plays into him, and watch this right here. Boom. He drives him 2.5 yards back into the backfield, again, forcing the running back to change direction. Right here, that guy's hips are almost pointed back toward the 15-yard line, right? He's very impacted by this. And then we know as the play continues, here comes that defensive end shooting into the backfield, right? So both of those guys are really taking advantage of the situation that's being created by having those tight inside linebackers. Okay, so now coming to the backside of the play over here, we're actually going to see what happens if the guard doesn't release up and do what Cincinnati kind of wants by blocking that linebacker. So Alabama, they do want to create double teams. They know that that's a good strategy for them. So they're going to take this left guard. Instead of having him come out to block this linebacker, they're just going to push him over to the nose to work a double team with the center. So we can see that. Keep an eye on the left guard. We'll just scrub it forward to see what that looks like. Okay. So there we go. There's that left guard center double team. That's our only double team along the line of scrimmage right now. Now, what's the consequence of that, though? So if this left guard ignores this linebacker, then who has to block him? Well, it has to be this left tackle. And that puts that left tackle in a foot race with this linebacker chasing the play. So keep an eye on those two guys as this play develops. We're going to see how that foot race goes. Okay, so we can see right here, the left tackle has failed to cut off that linebacker. The linebacker's gotten across. Let's watch it one more time now that you know what it's supposed to look like. Here's the left tackle. Here's the linebacker. Linebacker beats the left tackle across because, the guard, the guy who was in a better position to block him, is trying to work a double team. So that linebacker's right here. He's beat his man. He's able to get into the backfield. And here, he gets hands on the running back almost 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So just one more time to see all that. Left tackle, linebacker, we'll run it all the way through. Left tackle fails to cut him off. Linebacker's able to run through. Gets hands on the running back who's been forced to redirect by all the chaos, right? That's what it's supposed to look like. Just for a few more backside notes regarding the overhang, because this overhang player is out here on the edge, he's going to be in position to be a quarterback player if they run something like a zone read. So let's just come right here. Okay, we see the quarterback reading that guy. If the quarterback is running a zone read, and if he tries to pull the ball and keep it around the edge, the overhang player is in perfect position. So the overhang player is the quarterback player. And what this does is when the overhang player can take the quarterback on the zone read, it frees up this defensive end who is unblocked, because remember, the left tackle and left guard are both coming down for the nose and the linebacker. This defensive end is going to be unblocked. He's got a quarterback player outside of him, so all he has to do is crash down the line of scrimmage and take away the cutback. So let's keep an eye now on this defensive end to kind of complete the picture. Right, he's unblocked. He crashes down and chases the running back from behind. And this overhang player is in position to take the quarterback if he were to try to keep it around the edge. Now, when Fickell talks about these defensive linemen being able to create havoc, one of the things he likes to say is that he wants his guys to play football, not fitball. So what does that mean? Well, if we look at this defensive end right here, it looks like he might be shaded a little bit outside of the left tackle right here. Then he's got a tight end outside of him. So in a lot of defenses, that defensive end would have a very definite gap responsibility. They'd say something like, you're shaded outside of that tackle. You need to take away the gap outside of that tackle. And there are a lot of reasons the defenses are generally set up this way, but the dollar package is different. The dollar package doesn't want to put too many restrictions on this defensive end because they want him to be able to create havoc. So right now he's lined up outside of that tackle. It looks like maybe he could take away that gap. That's basically what we saw him do on the last play. We saw him beat the tackle to the outside. Okay, but what happens? Well, here Alabama starts to run to the left. And here we see this is the left tackle's helmet. So he's actually kind of run past or gotten across that defensive end a little bit. But in this defense, that's not a major problem because that defensive player, he's not stuck to his gap. He's just got the ability to see where the blocks are going and to try and create some chaos. So if we watch this one more time, he's outside the tackle. The tackle's going to get across him. I think that catches the tackle by surprise, right? Part of this whole goal of creating havoc is to force indecision for the offensive lineman. This tackle does not look like he expected the defensive end to be gone, okay? But the tackle crosses him, and what does that do? Well, that gets the defensive end lined up on this guard. He's charging through into the backfield. And so here, even though he's not quote unquote in his outside gap, he's still able to take away any outside run, right? The tackle's confused. He hasn't sealed him off. The guard hasn't been able to cross his face, right? So the running back is not going to be able to get this ball around the edge. The defensive end didn't stay in his gap, but he caused chaos and he forces the running back to cut back into the teeth of the defense where he gets hit early. So just now I mentioned that most defenses will have very definite gap assignments. They'd look at this defensive end and they'd say, you're playing outside the tackle. You take away that gap no matter what. And in the dollar package, that guy doesn't really have to play that strictly. And you might be wondering, why doesn't he? Why is it that he can get away with being a little bit loose with his assignment as long as he's being aggressive, creating havoc? And that is another unique feature of the dollar package, because what the dollar package does is it creates levels to the defense. So we've got a first level. Everybody's got that. We've got a second level with those two linebackers, but then we've also got a third level with those overhang players that are just sitting there playing really patient, reading what's going on ahead of them. So this time we're going to focus on our dollar backer. We're going to watch the run's going to be coming right toward that guy, but let's watch what he's able to do just being patient, sitting there and reading the play. Okay, so here's the snap. It's a run to the right. Actually, I should go back here pre-snap. Notice the pre-snap, he is in his overhang position. He's 6 yards off the ball. Okay, so look at how patient that guy's able to be. Here's the snap. Runs developing to the right. At the point that the running back gets to the mesh point with the quarterback, that guy basically has not moved. He's just sitting there looking at what the defensive line and the linebackers do. Okay, furthermore, he is unblocked if we think about it, right? The center has to block the nose tackle. The guard has to block the linebacker. We talked a lot about that. The tackle has to block the end. So there is nobody on this side of the formation that can get up to this guy. He can just sit and he can chill. Nobody's coming to block him. He can read the play and see where he's needed to fill in. So again, here's the snap. They get to the mesh point. That guy's just sitting there 6 yards off the ball. Now things start to develop. He sees the running back's path. The running back's coming downhill. And what does that guy do? He triggers. He comes downhill. And he makes contact at 2 yards. Now, at this point, some of you might be saying, hey, didn't you say that Alabama rushed for 300 yards? Why are we looking at all these good reps for Cincinnati? How did Alabama actually beat this structure? And on this play, we'll see a really good example of one of the ways that they were able to do this using the athleticism and the lateral quickness of their offensive line. So let's just step back for a second and look at some of the difficulty that the dollar can create in the run game. This is going to be a run to the left. Okay, so what's preventing Alabama from getting everybody blocked? Okay, well, the center has to block the nose tackle. We know that that's one of those one-on-ones Cincinnati wants to create. And so then the problem is, okay, to the left where the run's going, Alabama just focusing on the line for now has a left guard and a left tackle. That's two blockers. The dollar structure gives Cincinnati an end, a linebacker, and an overhang, and maybe even another linebacker who can get there. So there are just simply too many guys to this side of the field for Alabama to block. Now, where that lateral quickness is going to come in is what Bama's going to do is they're going to push their blocking scheme up to the overhang and kind of the most. So what that means is that the left tackle is going to block the defensive end. The left guard, instead of coming up and blocking this linebacker, he's going to push all the way out to the overhang player. Okay, so then the center and the right guard are going to combo block from the nose tackle up to this linebacker. Actually, the right guard way over here is going to end up being the guy that blocks this linebacker. And then the right tackle is going to cut off this linebacker right here, right? So they're basically pushing the assignments. 5 offensive linemen are going to block 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they're going to bring the tight end across to block this backside defensive end. So that's kind of what Alabama's going for, and here we're going to see him have good success with that. So to start, maybe let's keep an eye just on the combo block by the center and the right guard working from the nose tackle up to this play side linebacker. So after the snap, we see the right guard, number 55 here, comes over to get a chip on that nose tackle. Okay, again, this right guard is number 55. He comes over. He gets in on a double team with the center, and then he slides up and blocks this play side linebacker, right? He doesn't cut him off or anything, but he gets hands on him and stops him from shooting into the backfield and making a play. One more time. Right guard ends up blocking this play side linebacker after a double team with the center. There's the combo block. There's 55. Now he's up to the linebacker. Okay. The other thing that we can watch now is this left guard. He's going to release right past this linebacker and get up to the overhang. Okay, so there he goes. Okay. And then finally, the right tackle is going to use his lateral quickness. We saw a tackle lose a foot race earlier. This time, this tackle is going to win the foot race with this backside linebacker. So watch the right tackle right here. Releases off the line, gets good lateral movement, and boom, he has cut off that linebacker from the play. So what's the end result of this? Alabama is able to block everybody to the play side, and the running back right here is able to get the edge for a nice gain. Really nice gain. Now, one more thing, and this is kind of a schematic weakness about the dollar. The dollar is great if you can force everything back inside and prevent it from getting to the edge. But on this play where Alabama is able to push their blocking scheme to take out these 5 guys, what ends up happening when this ball goes outside is that this overhang player is too far from the play to make a difference. So it's almost like, he's kind of a non-factor here. So, here's the snap, right? Alabama's blocking all of these guys over here. This guy's unblocked. Remember, he's also sitting for the quarterback on the zone read. So by the time the running back gets the ball with a full speed ahead going away, that overhang player doesn't have any shot at making the play. So he's kind of taken out by the fact, right? He's carrying out that overhang assignment that we spent so much time talking about. Okay, now obviously that's Alabama, and not a lot of teams are like Alabama. So is that the only way that you can beat this defense? Well, definitely not. Every defense has weaknesses, and there are going to be some common strategies that teams will use as they try to get after this run structure. Here we're going to see UCF doing something different, attacking the same basic problem in a different way. So just like we saw from Alabama, this time the run's going to be going to the right, but the formation is really similar. So we know that the center and the nose tackle, the center's got to block him. They're going to kind of cancel each other out. So to the right of center, we've got 2 blockers on the line, right guard and right tackle, and they are outnumbered by an end, a linebacker, and an overhang player, right? So that's that problem that the dollar package presents. Now, what UCF is going to do to address this is they're just going to use this off the ball tight end or this H-back to give them a third blocker to this side. And so actually they're going to do it in kind of a fancy way. What's going to happen is they're going to take this slot receiver and they're going to crack him back to block the overhang. And then this wing tight end is going to release out to block the guy that was covering the slot receiver. Okay, so basically the right guard blocks the linebacker, the tackle blocks the end, the slot receiver cracks the overhang as the third blocker to this side, and then the tight end works out to clean up the guy that was covering the slot. So we can see that developing right here. There's the snap. Okay, right here, this is our slot receiver. This is our overhang. So the slot's going to crack back to take out the overhang, okay? And then at the same time that he's coming back on this guy, the tight end is going to release out to replace him and block his defender. So now we can watch the tight end. Right, there he goes. And that opens up the edge for the running back, much like we saw in the Bama play. All right, so now to turn to coverage for a couple of plays. In the podcast, I mentioned that Fickell is going to tend more toward the man side of the coverage spectrum, whereas Leonard was often more toward the zone side. And so what I want to do here is look at a similar route against Leonard's defense from last year, and then show how Fickell's dollar package would address it in a different way. So what we're focusing on specifically is a crossing route, or a dig even, by this slot receiver right here, who's going to push to the intermediate level and then break over the middle. So that's the kind of route that we're going to see against both of these defenses. So first up, we're looking at Leonard's defense from last year. This is Wisconsin against Ohio State. And something that he liked to do is what we're going to see. He's bringing a zone blitz. So he's taking this guy right here, number 14, and blitzing him off the edge. And then he's taking this outside linebacker edge defender right here and popping him out to play a zone coverage. So right now, let's just check out that blitz. This guy's coming. This guy's dropping out to replace him in coverage. Okay, so Wisconsin ends up in a nice, safe four-man pressure with this guy maybe reading the running back and coming late, and their edge defender dropping out to the middle of the field to play a zone. Now, remember that we're focusing on a crossing route by this receiver right here. As a part of this zone blitz, the guy that's going to be dropping to him or kind of playing closest to him is that outside linebacker. That's probably not a guy that you want running with a slot receiver on an intermediate or vertical route. So that's going to be a motivation for Leonard to play more of a traditional zone here. But let's just keep an eye on this guy as this receiver releases to run his crossing route. So that guy pops out. He's playing zone. He's not running with that guy or trying to challenge him. That's probably not in his athletic skill set. Okay. So at this point, we can see kind of the problem. Wisconsin's in, a nice kind of spot dropping zone. They've got these players distributed across the field. Nobody is directly running with that wide receiver. Ohio State's got a good run game, so they can exploit this. We see that receivers crossing behind the linebackers and underneath the safety. There's this kind of massive throwing lane for Stroud to hit him in, and he's able to get out to the sidelines for a big completion. That's not to say that Leonard never ran man or that he couldn't run man. He obviously did and he could. It's just that Fickell's going to tend in that direction a little bit more often, and the dollar is really well set up to do that kind of thing. So if we look at the receivers here, Alabama's got 3 receivers split out wide. Cincinnati's challenging those guys with a press on the outside, and then they're even playing pretty tight with their nickelback over the slot receiver. That slot receiver is going to be the guy that's running the crossing route. So we see here, unlike that zone blitz that we saw from Leonard where an edge player was popping out to the guy that was running the crosser. Here, Cincinnati's just straight up covering him with this nickel. So here's the snap. And we see right here, if this guy were running a slant or something, he would have the nickelback playing outside and over the top, and then the overhang player kind of driving down inside and underneath. So you get a really nice bracket on any quick breaking throw right here. And then as that guy continues on his crossing route, that nickelback is still just continuing to run across with him. So that guarantees that there's always going to be someone directly challenging that route, unlike we saw in the zone structure on the last play. They force Young out of the pocket, force him to throw it away. Of course, there's no such thing as a perfect defense. If there were, then everybody would run it on every play, but there's not. So every defense has a weakness, and that includes this man-oriented dollar package. We've talked a lot about these overhang players and how part of the benefit that you get from them is that if somebody tries to run a slant or a crossing route from the outside, the overhang players are sitting right there to cut it off. And so what UCF is going to do on this play is they're going to use Cincinnati's man assignments to get this H back. They're going to run him vertical, and then the guy who's going to have to cover him is this dollar backer. The dollar doesn't usually have man coverage assignments, but he sometimes will have to cover a tight end or a running back out of the core if they attack that guy. So here UCF's going to take this tight end, and they're going to run him vertical. And then in this kind of man-oriented defense, the dollar backer is going to have to carry him. That's going to get rid of the dollar backer and open up this lane right here for the slot receiver coming from the outside in. So keep an eye on this tight end and the dollar as we start the play. There's the snap. Okay, tight end releases. Dollar latches onto him in man. And that clears out this space right here for a receiver working from the outside in. So that's one way you can use kind of the drawback passing game to try and exploit Cincinnati's dollar structure. All right, that's it for the video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it helped illustrate some of the stuff that I talked about on the Buck Around podcast. And I hope that I'll see you back here to check out some more of the videos.